Many young men nowadays are enthralled by the idea of joining the armed forces in their country, and I'll tell you that the following video applies to just about anyone in the Western world. Although there may be a few caveats here and there, but we'll get there. But today I'm going to explain why exactly you shouldn't join any modern armed forces. And I'll go through a couple of the standard talking points that I hear from people who are interested in joining the military. Things that their family has told them, things that their recruiter has told them, things they may misunderstand about what it means to be in the military. But first you have to understand that I come from a military family. I've had a family member involved in every American war since the Revolutionary War, and living in Texas in particular in the United States allows me to interact with a military culture unlike very many places in the United States. Texas is very pro-military. There are a lot of military bases, and probably about 20 to 30% of all of my friends in my social circle have thought about or have joined the military in some capacity. And I've spoken to them, heard their experiences over time. Most of them, probably 90% of those people, joined when they were 18 or 20 years old. And they've gone into several different branches across several different MOs, and it's been an interesting experience seeing how similar their dislike of the experience actually is and some of the things that they complain about. My primary motivation for disliking military service does not come from my lack of authority or discipline, anything like that. No, it comes from the practical reality of the geopolitical situation that we find ourselves in and a knowledge of historical conflicts in the United States and the rest of the Western world. These governments do not have your interest at heart when they ship you off to war. They have the interests of the bankers and the lobbyers, the military-industrial complex. I know it's a loaded, emotional term, but it's true. These war profiteers want to send young men to die in some foreign place so that they can make money. And if you think things like the Iraq War, Afghanistan, or this pointless conflict in Syria are really in your best interest, then I'm not sure what to tell you, because you're wrong by any objective standard. These wars are not in your interest. I've seen too many young men go over, play in the sandbox, come back with mental deficiencies, mental health issues, I should say, things that are extremely hard to rehabilitate. And with that, you should consider yourself lucky, because many people come home in a box or missing limbs, and they made the ultimate sacrifice, an honorable sacrifice in any other situation, in order to fight for what they thought was their country and their freedoms. But of course, this has all been a lie. They were all lied to. We were all lied to about why we were in the Middle East. And in fact, I wouldn't say we've had a legitimate threat to the United States, militarily speaking, since maybe the late 70s, early 80s Soviet Union. And even during the times of these proxy wars, you have to call into question the motivations of the people behind it. The doctrine of the United States military during Vietnam was a disaster. Many people lost their lives. Many people saw it as a pointless conflict. We achieved absolutely nothing in the end, except a whole bunch of dead or severely scarred young men who had their futures taken away from them because the United States government decided to draft them. And then when they came home, they were abused and neglected not only by the state, but by the very people who they thought that they would be defending when they went to war. Now, I'm not willing to sacrifice for a government that does not hold my interests at heart, does not look out for the actual people of the United States, nor am I interested in going over and getting my arms blown off because Israel wants to conquer territory unlawfully. I refuse to spill any more American blood for the state of Israel. Now, for those outside the United States, this still really applies. Many of the Western nations of the world do not hold your interests at heart. They hold the interests of the state, the bankers, the industries, the war profiteers that are behind them. They're not actually there to defend the people, but there are some exceptions. For example, if you're in a small European state, Sweden, Norway, Finland, Switzerland, the Eastern Bloc countries like Poland, I could definitely see why you would want to join the armed forces there, because you can, and usually are, going to war or joining the military to defend the interest of your people. And these states are not perfect, but it's about as close as you can get, or as close as I get, to justifying military service. And honestly, I really wish this wasn't the case, because military duty is one of the most honorable things that men can do. It's their primary motive in life, in the natural world, is to be the defenders of their people and their nation. But our governments no longer hold that as a priority. They hold the priority of these war profiteers and banking gangsters instead of the people. Now, my work with these private government contractors and with various militaries across the world, you begin to see, or I started seeing, some of the things that were going on behind closed doors, and that opened up the Pandora's box of information. And the things that I know now cannot possibly make me justify any involvement in the armed forces outside of some type of do-or-die situation if we had some type of legitimate threat against us. Okay, but enough about that. Let's go over some of the things that I hear from pro-military people when they tell me why I or a young man should join the armed forces, or even now a young woman. And the first one is always discipline. If you lack discipline, join the military, you'll get disciplined. I don't disagree with this, honestly. The military is a great way to learn discipline, but according to the other things that I've just talked about, is it actually worth it just to get some discipline? Because if you really have the motivation and the interest in disciplining yourself, you can do it without having to join the military. Diet and exercise regimens can be found in the millions online. You can learn all of the secrets of discipline that the military teaches people, how to fold a bed, how to clean, how to march or stand at attention, so on and so forth. All of that can be found in a variety of sources on the internet, or even in real life if you want to talk to veterans. But the information is out, free for you to take advantage of at your whim. The next thing I always hear is money. And this one very much confuses me, because we all know that the signing bonuses and the salary of military personnel, especially people who are not very well skilled, sort of infantry boots on the ground, is terrible. It's absolutely terrible. Even going up through the ranks, when you reach something like first sergeant or master sergeant, the pay is not that great for the work that you're putting in. The only time where you're going to make real good money is if you go into a highly specialized field, if you already have some type of degree, if you're in aviation, aeronautics, or something like that, or you happen to be in a country where your special forces are paid very well, such as Australia. But if you already have a certain skill set, if you have a PhD or a master's degree, you should be in the private sector earning money instead of going off and wasting your life in the military. One caveat to this, though, would be aviation. If you're joining the Air Force in order to become a pilot, and you are qualified and all of that, if your end goal is to end up as a commercial pilot or something of the like, then yeah, I could see that justifying. And generally speaking, this is one of the things that you can't do outside of the military without an obscene amount of money, and that's learning how to fly certain types of aircraft. Really getting your wings requires military service just because of the expense. Now, you could still learn. Many of these training manuals are out there. The classrooms are out there. You can take a civilian pilot course for a few $1,000s, but it's not really the same as, becoming a fighter pilot or an Apache pilot or whatever. And if you're looking to become a commercial pilot, it greatly helps to have military aviation service. So that's one caveat I would give to this. On that same note, I hear a lot about work experience and work training in certain fields. Now, yes, this is also a decent reason to go into the military if you're going into a non-combat role. Telecommunications officer or the Corps of Engineers or something like that. Yeah, I could see a justification for that, but most people don't go into these non-combat roles. Most young men are trying to get into combat roles, as far as my experience tells me. But again, I would say that you're better off not going into the military and learning a trade, or if you're qualified, going to college. You can see my How to Build Work Ethic and Find a Job video for more information on that. But generally speaking, is this work training worth the sacrifice that you have to make to the government in order to receive it? I don't think it is. The next thing I hear a lot about is combat training and survival skills, in particular weapons training. Now, here's the interesting thing. There is nothing that the military can teach you about weapon skills or survival skills that you cannot learn outside of the military. If you're looking for weapons training, you can simply go out, buy a rifle of some kind, go down to your local range, and if you have the option to buy some type of AR platform rifle, grab one of those, configure it in a way that's similar to how your military configures it, and then find the rifle training manuals that are freely available online that teaches you everything that the military knows about rifle weapons training. Go out to the range and get to work. Depending on how much time and money you have, you might actually get more trigger time than the people in the military do if your sole purpose is wanting to gain weapons training. Now, if you're in a country that does not have free access for civilians to own firearms, I'm not really sure what to tell you. You might want to consider joining the armed forces if weapons training is exactly what you're looking for. But for me, I was raised on guns. I know how to shoot guns. I still own a variety of weapons, and I think that I'm competent enough with them that trying to join the military to learn marksmanship, it just doesn't make sense for me and many Americans. The same thing really applies to survival skills as well. If you're looking how to dig a trench or set up a line of fire or looking how to survive in the bush, again, many of these skills can be found online. You can find many tutors out there who are willing to help you. Many small local organizations will go out there in the bush and teach young men how to survive in the wild. Also, you can find plenty of veterans who are more than willing to share their information on things like this. And really that includes weapons training as well. In fact, you're better off looking for your local militia groups or Sunday gun day groups, just going out there kind of shooting the shit and maybe learning a thing or two. And if you're really, really motivated, you can get this material as well and start your own little survivalist / weapons training club if you want to. And it's a lot of fun. I belong to one of those here as well. Now then, the last thing that I hear from people who want to join the military is they see it as their duty, they see it as honorable, or they see it as a tradition that they must uphold. And I would say that serving your country is one thing, but serving your government is another. As I've said, these government militaries do not have your interest or the interest of your people at heart. You are not fighting for the neighbor across the street. You're fighting for the banker downtown in order for him to get rich off of war profiteering. That is not an honorable thing. In any other circumstance, yes, it would be an extremely honorable thing to sacrifice for your country by joining the military. But that is no longer the case. You do not have the duty to serve in the military for the interest of the government, for the interest of these war profiteers. It's not your duty any longer. In fact, you have the opposite. You have a duty to stay here, be productive, learn a skill, and start a family instead and protect them. Don't go off to some foreign shithole and get blown up in a foxhole just because Uncle Sam told you to. But if you come from a military family that has a long tradition of being in the armed forces, it may be hard to convince them. But ultimately, if they just don't know about the situation in the world, if they just don't know that this is a pointless sacrifice, if they're really pressuring you to join the armed forces, just tell them what I've told you. I'm not going to go overseas and get shot just so that somebody can profiteer off of it. Tell them that the government no longer has the interests of the people at heart, and maybe they'll listen to you. And if they don't, well, fuck them. Upholding tradition is one thing, but fighting for Zog is a completely separate monster in and of itself. Well, that will about wrap things up for this video. I think now that I've been covering the military lately, I think I'll do some videos on survival and weapons training for those who are uninitiated into these fields. But anyway, thanks for watching.